Welcome to the How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to this episode of the How of Business. This is Henry Lopez, and my guest today is Samantha Irwin. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here and be talking to you.
I'm excited about it as well because this is one of my favorite topics in business, customer service. It's particularly important to me. It's what I've aspired to deliver in the businesses that I've built and what I look for as a consumer, as a customer. So this episode is all about creating consistently exceptional experiences for our customers, our clients, our patients, whatever the case might be, our guests. And Samantha is with me today to provide insights and tips on how to develop your staff who are well-equipped, or so they can be well-equipped to create consistently exceptional customer experiences. To get more information about the How of Business, including the show notes page for this episode, and to learn more about my coaching programs, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. I also invite you to please consider supporting this podcast by joining my group coaching program on Patreon. And please subscribe wherever you're listening to this show. Subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Let me tell you a little bit about Samantha, a little bit more rather. Samantha Irwin is an entrepreneur, a speaker, and the founder of Kaizen Small Business Solutions. Kaizen is in the Japanese word for continuous improvement. And so she is inspiring and educating teams to create exceptional customer experiences that foster loyalty and advocacy. Of course, at the end of the day, driving both financial success and heartfelt service for brick-and-mortar businesses. With over 25 years of experience in leadership, Samantha's dual background in middle school education as a teacher, we'll explore that, and owning a boutique hotel, this has uniquely positioned her to empower and educate business leaders and their frontline customer service staff. Samantha lives in Oregon on a river somewhere. And so once again, Samantha Irwin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yes, we may have a hard time keeping ourselves at 45 minutes for this podcast with this topic. I love it. I love it. It's so impactful.
It's so impactful. It's always been a passion of mine. We'll get into it, but I always want to start with kind of the journey, because as I mentioned in the bio, you were a teacher, you studied education. That's what you wanted to be when you grew up, I'm assuming.
Partially. Yeah. Growing up in a pretty small town, I always had a business mindset and I dabbled in business, but because I was a woman and where I grew up, it wasn't really, there weren't a lot of women that I would look to that sort of laid the path. So, but education was a traditional thing for women. And so that's the route that I went when I was younger. But I always dabbled in business. And I also had taken some courses and they were so heavy on financial data and analysis. I thought, geez, must not be for me. But I completely was missing the whole entrepreneurial small business, which is where my niche was. Just didn't know. So yeah.
And there must have not been anybody that you could kind of run that by that said, no, that's not a reason you can't be a business owner. You assumed that, I don't have that skill, I'm not going to be good at business. Is that what you were thinking?
Oh yeah. Math was not my forte. Writing was, but yes, with all the heavy focus on finances and financial information and all of the finance part of business, which was the classes that I had taken, that's what their focus was. And so I just naturally concluded, well, shoot, that must not be my thing then. But I still did my own, my own independent work and here and there with different smaller things until later. So yeah, I did start out as a middle school teacher. I have my master's in education. And this is when I'm doing workshops or speaking and I'm introducing myself, I'll say, yeah, I taught middle school and loved it. I give a pregnant pause, waiting for it to sink in. I did say love in middle school in the same class, in the same sentence. And I did. Those kids are so weird. And my goodness, if you'd be successful leading and inspiring and challenging in a very respectful way, those prepubescent crazy kids, then you kind of can do most anything.
Yeah, no,
But
I
I
get
loved
it.
it. It
It's
was fun.
such a challenging age, but yeah, I just want to come back to the math thing because it's such a critical point for me. I'm terrible at math. I think I failed geometry in high school. I mean, I'm horrible at it, right?
Mhm.
Nonetheless, I became a computer programmer, another career where you would think,
Mm.
oh, you've got to be a math genius. No, not
Mhm.
exactly true. I was a successful programmer, and you and I have both been successful business owners. So for anybody who's hiding behind that or may have been
Mm.
fed that or thinks that, as you did perhaps, nothing
Mhm.
could be farther from the truth. Certainly, if you've got whatever your superpower is, I assure you, you can bring that to bear to make you a good business owner. You know,
Oh, yeah.
so thanks
Yes.
for sharing that.
Well, thanks
Um,
for following. I think you are 100% correct. And that's one of the things that helps support business owners and their staff is understanding that people learn differently. So you and I are in the math camp. I don't do
that's right.
mental math still to this day, but I
Still
learned through teaching and learning how to be a teacher that it's it doesn't mean that I'm dumb. It just means I learn differently. And that
yeah,
is it's a very important um attitude and understanding to have. So it shouldn't limit us. And unfortunately it does, like you and I. But you're right. You can turn those around and still be successful pursuing your passion.
agreed. Agreed. All right. So, what happens about 13 years into your teaching career that leads you to make this complete pivot and go buy a hotel?
Well, I was frustrated with the system. I loved where I was. I loved the kids. But the system itself with the current leadership that we'd had in our district at the time wasn't really it wasn't aligned with where I saw as a teacher that I was most impactful. So I sort of had a come to Jesus moment with myself, and I thought I could stay here and be frustrated, or I could choose to do something else. And being a person who is positive and entrepreneurial in spirit, I started praying and pressing in and searching, like, well, what is the next thing that I should do if this isn't it? Because this system, as it currently stands, is not going to change. So, um, yeah, it was a couple of years of figuring out what is my next step, what are my skills, where could they move into, and what could they move into, and had a lot of emotional ups and downs. So through that process, distilled down to pursuing a wedding and event center, like
Hmm,
having a space for people to do weddings and events,
okay.
because I loved organizing. I got that gift of administration. I think in dominoes, and I love physical work, like working outside. I mean, I'd rather go pull weeds than
Hmm.
go wine tasting, honestly. So, um, I we worked with different real estate agents, and I had a lot of like opportunities that seemed they'd come to the edge and then they wouldn't go through. They would fall through. And so it was very much an emotional roller coaster. And it was in the fall, I believe. My brother sent me at the time, this is dating myself, a little nickel ad, like about the size of a silver dollar. He mailed it to me and it was for this boutique hotel. It was for sale
Like
in
from a periodical, a local newspaper or
yeah.
something? Yeah.
Yeah, like the little nickel ads. It's like a little insert in your
Sure.
newspaper
Right.
that yeah, has little people used to put ads in there like a Rural Light Journal. I don't know if that's gonna ring a bell with anybody, but it used to be you'd put, seeking employment or seeking a date or whatever companion or selling this hotel. So that's how I came to know
Hmm.
about it. Um, do you want me to continue
Well,
on
yeah.
that?
Well,
What
one
happened?
question I have since you're pausing there is how long was how much time are we talking about from you decided you needed to do something else to this opportunity with the hotel? What time frame are we talking about there?
I would say it was a couple of years.
Wow,
A
that's a
couple
long
of
time,
years.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that the reason I asked there because I have so many people that I talk to, including myself, as I've been through that process. I call it sometimes the ideation process. You know, well,
Mhm.
what are different? And you vet things, and it's frustrating, and you feel like you're not going to find the right thing. Um, but I'm assuming that what kept you going was you knew you needed something different, and you knew you
Mhm.
wanted to go the route of a business, and so that's what kept you going.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Just kept pressing in. And even one place got to the point where we had an architect drop some preliminary plans. It was beautiful. And made an offer, came back, they didn't even counter. That was, I remember, a really big disappointment because our
Sure.
agent at that time was just as baffled as we were and said, I don't understand. They have this listed. You gave them a great offer. And it was just flat out, no,
Did they
nothing.
take it personally, or did you ever get any feedback as to why they did not
I
counter?
we never got any feedback. And you know what? To this day, that piece is still for sale. So I don't know what the
That's
weird
interesting.
story is
Yeah, there's
behind
some story there.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard. I mean, I've had that happen. You gotta not take it personally. So
Yeah.
the hotel, you had no experience, of course, with any kind of hospitality management. But
Right.
was it because I can see where he's like, well, maybe I could do events at this hotel. Was that part of the initial
That
thinking as to
was.
why okay, yeah.
Yep, that was because there's an acre of grounds around the hotel, and it was built we're on the West Coast, so you may giggle, but for us, this was old. It was built in 1907
It's
and
old.
21 rooms. This was in 2006, and it hadn't been opened consistently as a hotel since the 1940s.
Amazing. Yeah. In other words, only a crazy person would take this on as a
A little
project.
bit. So there is a through theme here. A lot of people look at me and when I say I loved middle school, they think I'm crazy. And then
Mhm.
this just what you hit on with like, that seems a little crazy that you would buy this hotel with.
Yeah.
So it's a
But
TMI.
I that comes up often. I think that especially others who are not entrepreneurial at that point in their lives, or that look at it, they see it as, well, you're crazy, but you saw in it something. You had enough confidence that you could make this work. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Actually, there was a moment that I saw it. So my husband and Jeff and honestly, for years I didn't remember Jeff was there. It was such a moment
Mm,
that I love him. We're still married
interesting.
24 years. I don't remember him being there. I remember walking in the back door with the then owner, Howard Green, Mr. Howard Green, and it was empty. There was no furniture in it. And I remember exactly where I was standing in the dining room when it was like turning the lights on in a dark room, and I got the vision for
Mm,
what the hotel and the grounds and the community and area would look and feel like, or could look and feel like. And
wow.
I stopped myself, that whole thing
Mm.
rose up in my chest like, oh, I got excited and I paused for a moment, and in my mind, I just stopped and I threw up this Hail Mary prayer, and it was like, if this is it, just open up all the doors, because I'd been on this emotional roller coaster
Mhm.
before, and I'm telling you what, they opened and fast. So lots of things came together
It
very
came together
quickly.
very quickly. Yeah. So um did you then you owned it for, let's see,
About
for
10
10
years.
years.
Mhm.
When you think about that original vision that came to you there,
Mhm.
is that what ended up being that happens, or did you end up with a very different place 10 years later? I'm curious.
It's what happened.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's
Yep. Yep.
fantastic. All
Yep.
right. We could spend a whole nother podcast episode on exploring that whole business, but we're going to move on. But I have this question, two questions. I'm always curious when somebody sells a business at a high level and based on what you can share, but why
Mhm.
did you sell that business?
That's a great question. I do get asked that on occasion. So the plan, we sold it after 10 years. Our plan was more long term, 20 years or longer. And in a nutshell, parent needs for both Jeff and myself came faster than we expected. So we needed to be more
More
available.
flexible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this was a business that you needed to be there physically and it consumed you in that regard. It needed you there. Is that part of it?
Um, partially there. Yeah. We grew it at the beginning, we lived in the hotel
Of
because
course. Yeah.
I
Literally,
was
you lived in the hotel?
restoring it. Yeah, I lived in it to restore it.
Yeah.
And then we had our house rented for 2 years.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then, and my husband commuted to the hotel. And so as we worked and grew the hotel and the business, eventually, he was, after a couple of years, he would stay in Hood River and then come on the weekends. And then as we grew more, I would go to the hotel on, 3 days a week and then go home on the weekends. So it grew and morphed. But it's a big job, and just the location where our parents both were located. Yeah, we had to
Mm, yeah.
just be a little more
Make adjustments.
physically close. Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta believe then that maybe you already had it, but that your focus and passion about delivering exceptional experiences was developed here.
You hit the nail on the head. Yes. And it was also born out of necessity because we moved into, for the second time in our marriage, borrowed my parents' trailer and moved into the parking lot while we were restoring. First, it was a house, and then we lived in it. And then this was moved into the parking lot at the hotel mid-August and started the restoration process. And I thought, being the person that I am, that we would be open at Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
Thanksgiving came and went. And then I thought, oh, Christmas, New Year's, oh, maybe Valentine's Day. There was just so much restoration to do. There's so much woodwork to strip, plaster to repair. There was landscaping to be done. The whole place had to be furnished. We were taking out windows and reglazing windows. And honestly, there was not a marketing budget. It was eaten up in sandpaper.
I see.
Literally. And so when we did open, my aunt from Texas, she's so wise. She said, you need to just have an event and then you'll be open. And I was like, okay, I love me a deadline. So that's what we did. And sure enough, 10:30 the night before of our first wedding, we are out with the flashlights and the light of the truck, pulling the things off of just finishing up the pond. So deadlines, I love them. And let's see, I ran off and forgot about your question.
No, that's okay. Is that where the passion and the focus on customer
the customer,
experiences came
yes,
from?
thank you.
And you
So
said that's what you had to do to
we
you
did,
led
yeah.
with that to develop a clientele.
Yes. And I learned there how expensive marketing is. The crucial, important part of making sure you know your target market, your target audience, your ideal client. And then because our marketing budget was so small, I had to focus on delivering excellent experiences, supporting staff to deliver consistently excellent experiences that garnered return visits.
Mhm.
And that's something we can get into now or later with the amount that it costs to attract
Right.
versus retain. And it was a way that we grew the business, and it was economical, it was efficient. It helped me retain not only customers and our guests, but my staff. So they really help understand their whole mission. So that's how I figured
Yeah,
it out. Figured
no
out the
doubt.
customer experience part.
So,
Yeah.
so I got to think that then you learn how to do this, and hey, you're a teacher, so instinctivly you know how to show others how to do this. And is that how Kaizen Small Business Solutions comes to be?
Yeah. So when we sold the hotel, I actually got asked by a woman who's a brilliant businesswoman. I think she owns an orchard. She was taking over her family's orchard, and she wanted to start a wedding venue on the orchard. And she reached out and said, "Hey, would you, I see what you've built. I see what you've done. Can I hire you to help me?" And that was my first foray into helping and to being a consultant.
I see.
And then understanding, as I saw this need with independent business owners, not understanding curating their customer journey. Most of the time when I'm doing workshops, people think, oh, I think partially in this way, but the map, I didn't know what it was, but I do now because, I've had the time not to work on my business, or in my business, but work on it. So it's something that business owners, it gives them a framework, because business is a hot mess. It can be a hot mess. And the framework for curating a customer experience, utilizing a customer journey map, is a way to take that hot mess and really organize it and help you get actionable steps that move the financial needle for your business. It helps you make focused, intentional decisions that support your success.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So let's get some further definitions here. Let's first start with, how do you define, and I think it'd probably be best by sharing an example. Maybe it's from the hotel or from another client. But how do you define a consistently exceptional customer experience?
It has to do with people. So when I'm teaching in the Power of People Academy, and we can talk about that later, but when I'm teaching, whether it's through video training or in-person workshops, I'm always talking about two things. There's two things that customers want. They want consistent product experience, right? Or they're having, consistent product. Let's just use a coffee shop. If I go in and I get a mocha, I want it the same every single time. They also want a consistent customer experience. So I think of it as tasks versus skills. The skills are people skills. So there's a consistency in your product or your service. And most businesses, that's why they got into business. They're passionate about the thing and they've got that down. What business owners often don't understand or aren't equipped to train, which is fine. It's great. I'll train that for them, is providing a consistent customer experience. The experience that your customers are having throughout the entire process of their journey with your business is called customer experience. So, for example, if you and I are in we've gone to some location and we want to go find a coffee shop. The first step, the first part of our customer journey, the first experience that we're having is when we're looking up online on our phones, trying to find a place, and we're looking at the reviews and whatnot. That's step one. That's where all those marketing efforts are going to try to find your customers. That's the first step in the customer's journey. And we're having an experience online in step one, whether or not people curate it.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
Whether or not, as a lot of small business owners realize, that I may not own that completely, like maybe I'm depending on Google business listing, but I certainly have some control as to what that looks like. The information that's provided there. How easy is it to find my location? How is it to find my hours? Those things are part of where that interaction starts, that experience begins, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And we make decisions based on that first experience. I made a decision recently for a dry cleaner. There were two in the area I was looking for that's not near, it's about an hour from us. And one was in business longer and had lots more reviews. The other one, the one that I ended up choosing, I chose because of the way that they responded to a negative review. And I've worked with a business owner locally here that same thing. He's had people come from 3 hours just for his business, even though they could get the same product closer to where they live and for less money based on the way he responded to that review. So it's important. That's when we decide. It's called consideration.
And then the next step in that could be, if you're navigating to my website, how easy is that? How easy is it for me to find information or to learn about what it is that I have to offer? So that your point is that customer journey map starts well before most people would think it does. Most people would think it starts when that person walks in the door, let's say.
Yes.
This is Henry Lopez, briefly pausing this episode to invite you to schedule a free coaching consultation with me. I welcome the opportunity to chat with you about your business plans and offer the guidance and accountability that we all need to achieve success. As an experienced small business owner myself, I understand the challenges you're experiencing, and often it's about helping you ask the right questions to help you make progress towards achieving your goals. Whether it's getting started with your first business or growing and maybe exiting your existing small business, I can help you get there. To find out more about my business coaching services and to schedule your free coaching consultation, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. Take that next step today towards finally realizing your business ownership dreams. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Now, going back to separating product from experience, immediately what comes to mind is, if we talk about McDonald's, they've got the product side of it pretty good. I can walk into a McDonald's anywhere in the world and the hamburger and the fries are going to more or less taste the same. Yeah. The Coca-Cola is going to come out calibrated pretty much the same, but the experience can vary widely. Yeah.
Yes.
And so that getting those two things in sync in the hotel industry, it's one thing to have the room ready and clean and presentable and a comfortable bed and the air conditioner works, But that interaction, beginning from that initial contact with the journey through, of course, the very critical interaction at the front desk, that's the experience side of it as well, is what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I
Yes,
understanding so
yes.
far? Yeah.
Yep. Because if I'll use this example in a workshop, well, let's say I'm going first and I go into a coffee shop and I have a mediocre mocha, but my experience with this brand new barista was great. And my day was better, right? They have a lot of power and influence and they don't really realize it, but my day was better. I'll go and I'll give them a second chance. But if I go in and I have the best mocha ever, and the people didn't look me in the eye, they were rude, they were on their phone, I had to wait. I can go anywhere else for coffee, and I'm sure as heck not going to bring you someone whom I want to impress or send you to that coffee shop. That would not be, people wouldn't do that. If it's more important, one thing is more important than the other. The
Yes.
experience that people are having with the people is more important than the experience they're having with your product, because they
Yeah,
will
and the
forgive it.
research and my experience and yours,
Yes.
of course, does. The experience is influences our perception of the product,
Yes.
obviously, right? But
Yes.
even in food, having been in the food industry, people will perceive something to taste better if the overall experience is positive. That has to do,
Yep.
for example, in a restaurant, with how the place smells, how it looks.
Yes.
All of that influences how we think something might taste.
Yes, even your visit to the restroom.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
It
All right.
doesn't, we can't go in the kitchen, but we go in the restroom. So
So
yeah.
I understand then. So an example then, give me an example then. Well, you already have, but we just at a high level. What was an example of how you delivered on that? Let's say at the hotel. How would you make sure that those two things were congruent, the experience and the product?
Um, oh gosh, there's so many examples. How I want to make sure that I'm answering the question you want me to answer. So you want an example of how we
How you
what we
create that exceptional overall experience then, and it's really just restating what we've already shared, which is,
yeah.
if I'm following correctly, the product is one thing, but I guess certainly at the hotel that as we
Oh yes.
continue in that journey, that first interaction when somebody walks in was critical, and
Yes.
training the staff purposely on that has to have been part of it, I suspect.
Yes. So making sure that we're having those exceptional customer service experiences for us at the hotel, and when I working with people, it involves every team member. So first of all, yes, it's about the customer, and that's the goal because the customer pays you money, yada yada. But in order to provide exceptional customer service experiences, we have to back up and first have an attitude that we are uplifting our staff and training them, because they are the face of our business and they are the people who are interacting with our customers. So foundationally, for us, one of the things that we did is I trained all of our staff a simple thing of smile, eye contact, and greeting. Even our housekeepers, they have a positive impact on our guests. They have the ability to make a difference, even though their interaction is like just walking by, just walking by. It makes a huge difference if you simply, when you're walking by, is you look at someone and you smile and say good morning or good afternoon or good evening. I've been on the receiving end of housekeepers in places 100% avoiding my eye
Oh
contact.
yeah. You're like
And
an
it's
inconvenience of like, oh, I got to move the cart out of the way, right?
exactly. Oh my God, are they gonna steal something? Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's empowering people, all people in the organization, to understand how important they are to the business, and then giving them and teaching them some skills to be able to perform and deliver those consistently excellent
And that's the
experiences.
key there, is
Yep.
empowering them with the training and the skills to learn how to do that, even though it might seem obvious, it's not. Not for
Exactly. It's
everybody. We
not.
have to show them, here's how to say it, here's what to say, let's role play that, let's model that. And that's what we have to invest in for those employees. And then, as you've touched on, is that when we do that, that empowers that employee in so many different ways. First of all, it signals to them, you're not just a faceless person behind the scenes. You're a critical part to us delivering this experience, right?
Yes. Yes. 100%. And what do most of my businesses complain about now? Staff turnover. Oh, apathy. Well, they have to get how important they are. Of course, they're going to, be apathetic and not care if they don't understand how much they matter and make a difference.
Yeah. And if I signal to them that, well, you're just a back of the house person, you don't matter
Yeah.
that much. Yeah.
Yeah. They if they don't get it, if they don't get why it's important to wipe the plate, because what's happening on the rest of the, what's happening on the other end of it, then they're not going to care as much. If they don't understand, if one of my gals that was with us for a long time as a housekeeper, those types of things can get really mundane and you start to not see things. One of the best things, I wish I could just show you a visual of this, empowering my staff at all levels reduced my staff turnover. And I saw one of my housekeepers I'm thinking of specifically. When she first came, she was not confident. Her shoulders were slouched. She didn't have a lot of self-confidence or any of that. And typically, housekeeping is something that has pretty high turnover.
Of course.
It didn't happen overnight, but as she understood that she still is very important to the customer experience, and what she does is where her job is, that's where people spend most of their time. I saw her transform from someone who slouched their shoulders, who was like, didn't have a great attitude about herself, to engaging with people, to engaging with customers from completely different socioeconomic culture. I mean, completely people that she would probably never have had confidence to interact with before.
Mm-hmm.
And then she showed up more and she was on it and she loved to work. And, I didn't have to worry about her calling in sick unless she was really sick because she was loyal. She knew
Yeah.
what
Oh,
she knew her
you
impact.
empowered her, you enabled her, and so now work. Well, it was still work, no doubt,
Mhm.
but I'm sure it shifted for her that now was a place where she could do well, where she could
Mhm.
perform well, and be recognized. And I think that most people, or at least that's the kind of people we're trying to attract and retain, are people that want to take pride in what they do.
Yes.
But we often have to invest in them, certainly on the customer service side, to help them achieve that, right?
Yes. Yes. And you are 100% right with thinking that people know how to do certain things or know how to even greet people. Um, People just don't. And it
They
is
don't. No.
getting better.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I
we
mean,
have
you
to
could
train
argue it
it.
might be getting worse you might not, I don't want to sound like an old person, but no,
Me
you
too.
cannot take it for granted that people understand how to do it a certain way. And beyond that, it doesn't matter. This is the way that we do it here. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, so are these things on this journey map, or how does this relate to what you call the touch points? Are these examples of some of those touch points, or what do you mean by touch points?
Yeah, that's a great question. Touch points are, so if you think about, if your listeners think about a map, say we're down in town and we want to hike up to the mountain, right? You've got a path that will lead you there. You could take the path, or you could not get on the path and you could just bushwhack through the trees to get up to the mountain. And a customer journey map is a path. So it's a laid out path that's researched, it works. And each touch point, so if I think about if you think about the entire hike that you're going on, imagine that along the way there are benches that you get to stop and rest, and you're like, oh, here's where this viewpoint is, and then the next time you go, oh, here's where the water hole is. And then so touch points in a customer's journey with your business are specific groups, I would say. So for example, in the map that I created, the first touch point is what we talked about earlier. It's that I call it out there. And that's the other maps might call it the consideration phase. That's what people are doing when they're thinking, do I want to
Yeah.
go to this business?
If
Do I
we,
want
we
to give
think
them my
about it
money?
in the way of a funnel, right? And
Yes, in a
somewhere there.
funnel.
Yeah.
Yes. The second step in the journey is on the way. So yes, now we have Google tells us how to get there, but that's an auditory learner, and signage works 24/7. So what kind of visual things do we have for those visual learners? The signage that works 24/7 for us, the on the way part. Step 3, this next touch point, is your what I call your entrance or lot, if you have it. So at the hotel, it mattered that we weeded and made our parking lot clean, because like you mentioned before, that is giving people an impression
Absolutely. It's setting a
about what
tone.
they're
It's our,
going to get in
that's
their
right.
room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then number 4 for me in my map is with the people, which is far and away the most impactful stage in the customer journey. Then it's with the products, or like for us, it's with our food or our rooms. And then I call the step number 6, the 6th touch point, I call it the dating game. And this is a piece that many people often miss, because marketing is in our minds all the time. Like acquisition, acquisition, we got to post, we have to market. But the real money lies, and I learned this by accident. And now it's backed up with research, but the real money, the financial success where you can make the most money, is in that retention piece, when we are curating the experience for our ideal client. So my philosophy is you give a great experience to everyone all the time, but it doesn't mean that they're all your ideal client.
Right.
So you think McDonald's and a 5-star Michelin or 3-star Michelin restaurant, right? They both serve food. They both serve different audiences. They one of those is a better fit for you and your listeners than the other one. The ideal client is where we always want to think about and focus on when we are curating the entire customer journey, and we're curating the experience during each of the 6 touch points in the person's journey. Now, I'm verbally saying that without a visual, so I hope that it translates.
Oh, yeah, no, it makes sense.
Okay.
And I'm assuming then the tool, which we'll have a link for in the show notes page, is the tool that people can access for free, is the customer journey map workbook.
Yes.
That'll help you map this out, correct?
Yeah. And here's a visual for you. So the one I created is it's in a Ferris wheel form on purpose, because traditional maps are linear in nature and they
Assuming
imply
that
in,
there's a
out.
beginning and an end, and that's it,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
And that's it. And that's not the smartest financial way to think about it. So if you think about the ideal client, I don't know, I'm at the fair, the teacup person where, it's a little, you sit in and then it spins and then it spins around. And my husband loves the Ferris wheel. I'm not a fan of heights. So there's something for everybody. So with the traditional customer journey map that I've created, it's in that Ferris wheel shape. So like I said, we give everybody great experiences regardless, but the ones that we really want to focus on dating, that retention piece, the last step of their journey, are our ideal client. It would be the Jeff. And then me, who's the teacup person for a different business, you just fly me off and I land over in this teacup and enjoy my ride over there. So for example, there's lots of coffee shops. Not all of them have my vibe. I can get coffee at all these shops, but there's specific things about me and a specific business that it's going to be like a match made in heaven. So
what I'm hearing there, if I'm
Yeah.
following, which I really like, is that what that helps me to do as a business owner is to not try to be everything to everybody.
Correct.
I'm finding my ideal client and making sure that that's what I focus on. So
Correct.
one of the many ways that applies is that certainly we take feedback from everyone. We want everybody to have a good experience, but I pay particular attention to how my ideal client is experiencing whatever it is that I provide.
Yes. Yep.
And I continue to fine tune that for
Yeah.
that ideal client. Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
If I in turn try to make everybody happy, I end up with a Walmart, right?
Yes.
That's not what we want, right?
Yeah. We don't serve everyone
We don't
well.
serve everyone.
Or
No,
excuse
we
me, we
can't.
don't serve everyone. We're
Yeah.
not for everyone. And that's okay, because
That's okay. No, that's exactly
Yeah.
what we want. And the other
Yeah.
thing with the Ferris wheel, the circle, is that It forces us to look at the lifetime value of that
Yes.
customer or client. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
The part that has been the hardest for me to execute when it relates to customer services, and I've had very high standards in my businesses, is the consistent part of it, right?
Mm.
Most businesses can deliver good customer experiences sometimes. It's very hard to do it almost all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yes.
have you found there is one of the tricks to the consistent part of this?
That's an excellent question. Um, Service is selfless. It is selfless again and again, again. It's all about giving, and it is incredibly difficult to continually serve well because people, customers, guests, they suck you dry.
Right, right.
So as a leader in our organization, when we had the hotel and when I work with businesses, there needs to be consistent marks, like whether it's a monthly meeting, quarterly, whatever. People need to be continually fed. If
Mm,
I want a tree to grow and be healthy and have great roots, I'm going to put it on drip irrigation when I start it, right? If I drown it twice a year, it's not going to be that great. So when we relate that to our staff, we need to consistently support and uplift and problem solve and train with them and listen to them because they're the people who are really giving all the time. So
yeah.
it is challenging. It's very challenging.
No, that's a great point. I think where I would add to that is you gotta, so that selflessness, you gotta hire for that trait. I can teach
Hmm.
you how to do the job, but I can't teach you how to be someone who really is passionate about helping others. Yeah. But
Oh,
then
yes.
but then your point is so critical that often we look at it. So, okay, you've trained, you're good to go. End of conversation. Instead, it has to be an ongoing program of nourishment and coaching and feedback and skills development, is what you're telling me.
Yes.
And that's what hopefully leads to a more consistent delivery of that experience.
Yes, 100%. And people, it doesn't have to be perfect. And you don't
No,
have
it's
to be a,
impossible to be perfect. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to be a, you know, Tony Robbins speaker leader type. You don't have to be. I've worked with business owners who are very, very quiet and um, not in the limelight. And it doesn't matter. One of the things that's okay to do and often give permission is mess up and share it with your staff because it gives people it takes the pressure off of them. They're going to
Yeah.
screw up. So seeing you as a human is also good. I did want to touch on something as a takeaway because you touched on it and I thought, yep, that's one of the most important things I had tattooed on my eyelids. When people are hiring for front-facing customer service jobs, I'm not talking about bookkeepers in the back room.
Right.
When it's a customer-facing service job, hire personality and then train them with the skills to do the tasks.
Agreed. Agreed.
And my coach actually said to me one time, she's like, "Oh my gosh, is that hard? Is it, if you could train people how to do that, that would be great." And I said, "Yeah, it's not that hard." And she said, "What?" I said, you start with building a muscle. Hospitality is a skill. You touched on it earlier, and people either have it or they don't. Like you
Mhm.
either have the gift of, I'm not going to be a physics person. I'm not going to be a mathematician. It's not
Mhm.
my thing. I have art skills, but personality or hospitality is also a skill. It's a gift. It's an innate thing that people have or they kind of don't have.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
one way that leaders can help identify it, because leaders don't necessarily have it. You don't have to have that to have a great business idea. But if you have a front-facing customer service person, they need to have it. So how do you start to learn to recognize it? Well, the first thing I would think is there a bakery that you go to or a coffee shop that you go to where you are wanting that a specific barista or a specific person to help you or a specific waiter or waitress? Is there a line in a grocery store that you gravitate towards? Is there a person in the bank that you think, "Oh, I'm going to go to their line"? That's the first step of raising the awareness. Most likely that person has the gift of hospitality because you're gravitating towards them. They make you feel welcomed. And that is feeling welcomed is a direct result of somebody having the gift of hospitality. Then you need to train them. They can't just like, abdicate the throne there and
Right,
let
right.
them do their thing. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you got to give them the guidelines, and so yeah, so extremely well said. I completely agree with that, and I think that answers the question that I want to ask here as we start to move on about if I've got a customer service challenge or I'm not doing it well now, where do I start? I always want to ask that question. But it seems to me that in there you gave me the answers to that question, that a place that I can start is by becoming much more conscious and aware of how I, as a consumer, what do I look for and what is it about that person? And it's that quality that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do nothing more than that, then change who I hire and who I keep to
Mm-hmm.
have that skill first, and then I invest in them and teaching them how to do it our way, that's where I probably would start. But is there anything else? What else would you recommend when you get hired by a client and say our customer service is terrible? Where do you usually have them start?
That is a perfect, what you said is the first place to have
Yeah,
them
first
start.
place. Yeah. For them to
Yeah.
be aware of where do they get it themselves as a consumer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I have them, if they're having customer service issues, sometimes you need your own gut check. And I don't work with leaders who feel like people, they can take it or leave it. Like, oh, you could choose my business or not. That's, it's my way or the highway. That's not my ideal client. So my ideal client is someone who is of service to others. And that being of service to others is being of service to your staff and also to your customers. So the second thing after hiring personality training skill that you need, because I made that mistake once myself. I thought I could do it the other way around. Didn't work. Doesn't work. Then the second thing is start some consistent training or a book read or something to do, pull something that has to do with helping people understand how to give great service. There's podcasts, there's video trainings. I have a course, there's books, there's all these tools. The owner doesn't have to know how to do it. You could simply grab some other tools and training from other people who do it well and try it.
Yeah.
Try it and experiment and see how it goes.
Great advice. Great advice. And then you touched on something that will reiterate and then we'll move on here, but I think it's so critical. If you as the owner or you and your partners don't believe in this, don't believe that you delivering customer service because it's the right thing to do, because it's what represents you, then it's just going to be what I call lipstick on a pig. It'll be that plaque at that bad fast food restaurant that recognizes the employee of the month, but there's nothing behind it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you don't embrace it, if you don't want to deliver as the owner, you don't want to deliver a consistently accessible customer experiences, nothing's going to work. You won't,
Yeah.
right? So
Correct.
that's where it starts and ends.
Yeah, you'll just continue to have high turnover with your
That's
staff.
Right. That's right.
And poor reviews.
And poor reviews. Exactly. Well said. Okay. We talked about the go to the show notes page for this episode at thehowofbusiness.com. I'm going to have a link to this free customer journey map that we've been talking about here as a great place to map it out from beginning to end. But then you touched on it. You have a workshop or an academy. Tell us about that.
Oh, thanks for asking. So hiring a consultant for a small business is sometimes, especially if we're not in the same location, it's expensive. And so I created out of need for clients a low cost training that takes it's 6 steps or you take 5 weeks to go through it. And I've taken these workshops and I put them into the teaching into this. It's called the Power of People Academy. It's a hospitality boot camp. First of all, I teach them about how important they are, whether they think it's a temporary job or their dream job. They have the same amount of impact and influence on the bottom line of the business and the trajectory of the customer's day. Those two things, they are the connect the dots for those two things. So first of all, we start with helping them understand that like you are very important. So there you go. And then teach them how to make good first impressions. There's called the trifecta. The module is called First Impressions. Then we move on to Pareto Who, which gives them business knowledge. Because if we want people to perform, let's teach them about some business. That's that 80-20 rule. And then the next module is sales versus service, a little mindset shift. And after that module that you go through with your staff, they'll be able to upsell with much more ease. That was taken from a training that I did with a local deli, and it was so much fun to see the difference. Small tweaks.
Right.
And then the last module is called Congratulations, You Screwed Up. And it's how I teach a 3-step process to change the narrative from when you make the mistakes.
Right.
It will happen. Mistakes will happen. And how do we empower
from that,
staff?
right? How do you,
yeah. And not just to fix it, but how do you transform that guest, that customer, into somebody who is now telling others about, oh, you know how they messed up and this is what they did. They're amazing. That is extreme customer loyalty right there.
Extremely powerful when you teach people how to do that. All right, I'll have a link to that so you can learn more about that program on the show notes page for this episode as well at thehowofbusiness.com. All right, we'll wrap it up here. And thanks for indulging me here with the extra time. What's one thing you would want us to take away from this conversation we had about creating exceptional customer experiences in our business? Particularly here, we're talking about brick and mortar businesses, but what's one key takeaway?
I often say, take the next step. Just take the next step. Make it easy. Just incorporate one thing that resonates with you and implement it, and then just keep going, because it's creating great customer service experiences. There's a lot to it. It won't happen overnight. So just take the next step and start a book, like have them read a book or watch a video or invest in a training and see what happens. I'm pretty sure you'll be delighted.
No, I agree with that, because that also, what I find with anything, if you try to do it all at once, it's overwhelming. You'll get paralyzed. You'll do nothing.
Yes.
Plus there'll be resistance at all levels.
Yes.
So that's a huge takeaway. I think the other big takeaway for me from the conversation that you shared is that concept, because I so believe that it starts at the top. It starts with us as the owners. That consciousness of who do we gravitate to in our experiences as a customer and why. And then that critical component of hiring for that personality type and then teaching them how to do the job. I think those are huge takeaways as well.
Good.
Where would you like us to go online to find out more about you and your services?
Probably the easiest way. I'm on LinkedIn, but probably my website, and that's www.kaizen.zone. So KAIZEN.ZONE.
Excellent. Samantha, great conversation. As we alluded to at the beginning, you and I are passionate about the topic of customer service, so we can talk about this for hours, and hopefully we'll have you back on to explore some more. But thank you for taking the time and for sharing and for being with me today.
Oh, you are a fantastic podcast host. Thank you for hosting me.
Appreciate that. This is Henry Lopez. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The How of Business. My guest today again is Samantha Irwin. I release new episodes every Monday morning, and you can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including at my YouTube channel, the How of Business YouTube channel, and of course at my website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.